Meeting to order. Welcome to the Shellfish Management Advisory Committee meeting. It's July 23rd, 2025. I don't have my clock. I assume it's a few minutes after 4 p.m. and we're at the Fort Monroe, Virginia Marine Resources Commission office building. Adam, would you like to get started with introductions?
Yeah, thank you everyone for coming tonight for the SMAC meeting. Just a real quick thing, I think everyone got a handout. It should have the agenda in it. I did want to take a minute to recognize the newest appointee to the Shellfish Management Advisory Committee. Mr. Michael Shackelford is the newest appointee on this committee. I want to give the floor, if I could, to Mike real quick, if he just wants to introduce himself to the committee, a little bit of background, and maybe where you're from.
I'm Mike Shackelford. I've been a commercial waterman for over 45 years. And oyster, fish, do a little bit of everything what it takes. So if I can be any help, that's why I'm sitting on here, hoping I can be some help.
Well, thank you. I appreciate your service to this committee. We also have in the packet you have in front of you, there is recommendations on rotational harvest strategies that came out of a sub-panel from the Blue Ribbon Oyster Panel. So the Blue Ribbon Oyster Panel met back on May 9, 2025. One of the items that came out of that Blue Ribbon Oyster Panel was to task a subgroup with looking at rotational areas. We distributed it in this packet because I thought it might be helpful as we look forward to what the season might look like. Generally, we structure these meetings in kind of a two-part cycle. We sit down and talk as a group tonight about really what the season might look like. We put it together as staff and send it back out to this group. And then generally we meet about 2 weeks later to come to final decision and action. So that's been a good rhythm for this group and the public to be able to do it. So I'd just like to point your attention to that's available in your packet to some of those recommendations that came out of that subgroup as we work through this today. So also in that packet, you'll see the agenda in the minutes. So Jackie, if you want to move through that.
First, I'd like to see if I can get a motion for the approval of the agenda.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Okay, any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
And then approval of the minutes. Do people need a moment to read over that?
So moved, Madam Chair.
Okay, get a second? Thank you very much. Any further discussion? All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Passes unanimously. It's hard to believe we haven't met since February.
Just as an aside, we do have 3 members, Dan, Dine, and Bev, who are trying to get on through WebEx. Obviously, the travel time for them doesn't quite work, so pardon the interruptions as we kind of go through this, and maybe they'll jump on, but their intention is to try to. But just for transparency, they are trying to listen in and be part of this conversation as well.
Okay, wonderful, thank you. Hopefully they can connect with us soon. Should we start with introductions? Tommy, do you want to get started?
Sure. Tommy Kellum, Williams, Virginia.
Ben Johnson, Suffolk.
Richard Harden, Reedville.
Cody Metcalf, Eastern Shore.
Jackie Shannon, Chesapeake.
J.C. Hudgens, Matthews.
Lee Deal, Heathsville.
Roy Rice, Reedville.
Mike Shackelford, Gloucester.
All right, thank you all. Lee reached out and very generously offered to say a few words about our friend Peyton. So Lee, you have the floor.
Yeah, as most of you guys know, we lost one of our committee members due to a sad incident. Peyton was always a smiling face here and always willing to give a hand. I'd like to ask for a moment of silence. All right, thank you guys.
Thank you so much, Lee, and welcome, Mike. I was just saying that's one of the first watermen I met when I moved up to Gloucester in 2008, so it's good to see you again, and thank you for your time and talent. I'm going to move into update on the 2025 replenishment and restoration plan. If you'd like to take that away, Adam.
Yeah, but before I turn it over to Andrew to go through everything we've accomplished, One of the other things that's not on the agenda that we discussed last time is a committee was putting in an exception to transfers on oyster user fees. It's something that this committee unanimously supported last time. I'd just like to reintroduce that topic and see if that committee really had any more feedback on that exceptions for transfers. Just a little bit of background. We do have a system in place that allows you to transfer to immediate family members. A lot of times, I shouldn't say a lot of times, sometimes what happens is when someone passes away, when you're trying to transfer all licenses, you just immediately transfer everything to your spouse. Well, we run into a situation where that spouse now doesn't have 3 years of harvest underneath their belt to be able to transfer. So we're looking to be able to put an exception in this August to allow the commissioner to grant something on medical, military hardships, something very similar to what we have in our other fisheries, something I introduced to this committee before, and it was unanimously supported. I just wanted to make sure that we're all on the same page. I don't necessarily have a slide or anything. I just wanted to make sure we're still on the same page moving forward with that.
Yeah, I think so, Adam. I think that would be a good thing.
Okay. And so you'll see that as we move through this, and you'll see it in the draft regulation when August comes around as well. So I'll turn it over to Andrew to go over the 2025 replenishment restoration projects that we've completed this year.
All right. I'm just going to give a quick kind of rundown of what we've done so far this year based on the SMAC's and the Commission's input and approved plan. Then I'll stop and be glad to answer any questions before we get on to the next item on the agenda. All right, let's see if I can make this work. Apparently not.
Mute it, but I'm not able to unmute.
You can't hear me at all there, Jamie?
Nope.
Should be called in there. It should be the volume, but I don't think.
This is just on the WebEx. Apologies for the technical difficulties. When you try and do hybrid meetings, this is what happens even when we test it beforehand.
Now there's no, I'm not even seeing an unmute button on here at all. I can't do it. Yeah, nothing.
No more options. Click.
Yeah, it's not doing it.
Mine
Wait.
didn't do it either.
Don't know what's going on.
This is just the WebEx.
Yeah.
No, Beverly's on there now, but.
All right, we'll have to do it without the WebEx.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. Yep. Okay. Jamie, if you could maybe just send Beverly a note saying that she might not be able to hear us here. All right. Well, now that's working anyway, so I can advance slides, so that's something. So I guess I'll go over it sort of in order of how we accomplished the replenishment restoration projects this year. So the first thing that we undertook in the spring of this year was the seed transport projects that were approved by SMAC and the Commission, primarily to transport seed to lower recruiting areas or areas that could use a boost from that seed. This spring, we transported, as agreed by this commission and the committee, 12,000 bushels of seed from lower areas in the lower James River to areas in the upper Pocomoke and upper Rappahannock rivers. So that was the dredge seed from that Nansman Ridge location, and we did just a little under 12,000 bushels. In addition to that seed, we transported seed from the upper James River hand tong areas, 6,000 bushels in total, with 3,000 bushels going to the Yacomico and approximately 3,000 bushels going to the Cone, to the hand tong areas and those tributaries to the Potomac. In addition to the seed and our other projects, we did 10,000 tons of stone placement in Mobjack Bay. This is part of a 4-year NOAA-funded grant. When it's completed, it will have constructed nearly 60 acres of additional new reef adjacent to the Browns Bay area in the lower portion of the Mobjack Bay. And our shell planting, as sort of outlined in detail in previous meetings and approved by the commission, included over 850,000 bushels of shell being planted in areas, primarily harvest areas, rotational harvest areas throughout the bay. So this included areas in the James River, Rappahannock River, York River, Pocomoke, and the Pocomoke Sound were primarily the areas that we planted this year. And this used both shucking house shell. Most of it was the dredge shell that you see in that picture there from that deposit in the lower James, as well as some shell from seaside deposits on the eastern shore that were placed in Pungateague area. So that was the summation of our replenishment work. There's likely one more project coming up in the Rappahannock River, about 1,500 tons of stone going on some existing sanctuary areas there. So that was more or less what the replenishment program has been up to for the last several months, is completing that work, and I'd be glad to answer any specific questions on that activity there.
Is 850,000 bushels pretty typical of what you transplant in a year?
850. 850.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, no, here recently, in that over 500,000 to just under a million bushels range is sort of where we're at. For a long time now, we've been doing pretty close to 500,000 or 600,000 or more every year. And this includes, again, some of that house shell as well as those shell deposits. But in that 500,000 to about a million bushel range, depending on prices, is sort of where we've been for a number of years now.
Andrew, did we spend all that money?
We didn't go completely broke, but we spent a good piece of it there. So no, we still have some funding for areas in the
Okay.
spring. But no, you can imagine that does cost a fair amount. But
Yeah.
yeah.
The Browns Bay, the stone and Noah, that was separate, right?
That's correct.
Yeah.
That was separate federal funding that,
Yeah.
didn't take anything from the general funds that the state allocates
Okay.
for this project. And I guess anecdotally, what I can say from the trim tabs on the boat that planted most of that shell is there's a decent spat set going on out there. So.
Okay.
Any other questions for Andrew? Did we get Dan on the phone, just out of curiosity?
We had Beverly and Dan pop up. I'm not sure if they can hear me right now or not, so, but I don't. Beverly was just there a second ago, but she's been on and off, so.
I got one more question, Andrew. Are you going to go over what we replenished per area? Do we have time for that, or?
We don't have a detailed breakdown,
I
but
don't?
that sheet that we went over, we hit all those areas. So, I mean, that included focused areas in the Rappahannock were areas 3 and 5.
How about area 1?
Area 1 as well, yeah.
Okay.
So that was on that sheet, yeah.
3, we would do 3, and
Area 1, 3, and 5 in the
5,
Rappahannock saw most of that replenishment.
anything 7 and 8?
Not, some seed went there, but nothing shell-wise.
Oh, sure was,
Yeah.
okay.
And we did start, just for this group's information, we did get some shell over in that area we discussed, creating a new seed area there off of Jail
McHale
Island
Bay,
in
yeah.
Upper James. So we planted about a 52-acre spot there with shell this year.
Do you have the numbers from last year yet?
Harvest numbers?
Yeah,
I can go into that in the next slide if we
okay,
want.
that's
Yeah.
fine. No, I just want to make sure we covered it.
Mr. Chairman. Do you have any idea what you ended up on for cost per bushel of the James River seed that was hand tong harvested?
Yeah, it ended up being right around 1450 overboard, I
Overboard,
believe.
yep. So you stayed under that 15 we were talking about, right? Wasn't that the number we had?
Yep, that's correct.
Good job.
Yep,
That's all impressive.
appreciate that. Yeah.
How much does it cost for the dry shells that you're taking up?
Those depends on how far from the dredge location. So a lot of it's just a mobilization cost, but they're in that 350 to 450, maybe a little higher range, depending on how far from the dredge site.
You say you plant it at Jail Island and James River for seed. That's dry shells that you put there for the strike.
That's correct. So it's in the offshore jail island section, so not that area that's shallow where folks are hand tonging, but the offshore jail just above Wreck Shoal in about 9 to 12 foot of water in there where there wasn't much on the bottom. Yep.
Above it.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. So
The
offshore.
bottom used to be worked there, but nobody's gonna work there now because it's long tone. Years back, used to work there. But nobody's gonna go to all that area. Had different rocks on years ago, but like I said, nobody's gonna work because it takes long tones and nobody's gonna go there anymore.
Yeah, no, we went out and sort of pre-surveyed that area, and it was a sandier, harder bottom.
Yeah.
Not like some of the mud lumps in the upper James. And there wasn't really many spots of good oysters, just some little patchy areas
Yeah.
here and there. Yeah.
Okay.
Move us along.
Yeah, no, that's all I have for replenishment update. Thanks to all of our field staff for the long hours out there. It was a hot one, but hopefully that bodes well for some spat sets here. So,
Thank you, Andrew.
all right.
Water's certainly hot enough for it.
Yeah, if you want, we can move on. Or do you have anything else to add, Adam? No? Okay. All right. So I guess we're on preliminary discussions. Is that right?
That's right, yep.
All right. So I guess Adam kind of touched on it a little bit, but I think what we're hoping to get from this committee tonight is sort of some input, and then we'll come back at an upcoming SMAC meeting. I think we're looking at that August 7th date to come back to you with the traditional chart, taking in your input from today. But I'll give a little bit of background, and then we can work through the that Blue Ribbon Oyster Panel subgroup's recommendations, and then I'll kind of step back and we'll let you all discuss it, and if there's any questions along the way, feel free to jump in. But with that, I can go right to it here. I can try. Not a great day for technical difficulties here. Come on.
Madam Chair. While Andrew's working on that, I'd just like to thank staff and this committee. I can say, not from an economic perspective, but as far as the supply of oysters and the way the season went, I think this past season was one of the best that I've ever seen in my time. I think it was well planned. We beat other states to the market with resource. We had oysters this year. I never had been a big proponent of a May shaft tong season, but it worked extremely well. It was a nice resource. It brought more money because it wasn't a lot on the market then. So I'd just like to thank everyone involved. I would be pleased if we could do that every year. It was very good.
It's great to hear. Thank you, Tommy.
All right. I think I got my arrows working. Thanks for the for the input there, Tommy. Glad to hear that. So I guess this is the graph you're used to seeing here of our harvest trends on public and private bushels. And just as a public service reminder, in case anyone's comparing bushels, the Virginia bushel is about 15 or 20% larger than the Maryland bushel. So when folks are comparing things, keep that in mind with our up the bay neighbors, that ours is a full 3,000 cubic inches. So the preliminary harvest for the 2024-2025 season And just as a reminder, the season goes from July 1st through June, so that's why we're still considering it preliminary, because a lot of those numbers are just coming in now for that June month, particularly from private ground. But the public harvest was right around 260,000 bushels, which is up about 5,000 bushels from the season last year. And the private ground harvest was right around 360,000 bushels, which is up about 10,000 bushels from last year. So again, we're kind of on that relatively stable, right around 600,000 bushels, give or take, for the last several years here, but generally tracking upwards since those low points in the early 90s. And this is just market oysters only. That doesn't include any seed harvest reported from public or private ground. Just in case it comes up, and for your reference, this is what the reported number of harvesters by gear type in 2024. So this is just to have handy if needed. But again, the majority of the harvesters were hand scrape, followed by dredge, hand tong, and then patent tong. So those were the number of people reporting harvest with that gear in 2024. Were there any questions on that before we get into the Blue Ribbon Oyster Panel Work Group recommendations?
Jack, would it be a lot of trouble, Andrew, on that last slide, not tonight, but to actually get the harvest associated with those?
Yeah, no, that's easy enough.
Thank you.
That'd be good information.
Any other questions on that? So generally, kind of stable where we were with the previous years. You kind of expect that. Not much of a change there with the length of the season and market conditions.
Andrew, were the numbers down on dredge or scrape fishery last year from the year before that?
I don't know offhand, in terms of number of participants, you mean? I haven't done a long-term search on that, but I think it's been maybe a couple boats here and there, but it's been pretty stable, I think, the number of actual boats working. I wouldn't know offhand the number of days, but I think on Tommy's point, we can pull the sort of effort, and I can do that relatively easily long-term, so you can see the trends there, if that's helpful. All right. So again, these are recommendations that I'll go through that are in that document that you have, and I'll just run through them for everybody real quick, and you can follow along, and then I don't have much more to add and let you all discuss those, and then we can get into discussion on any other specific areas that you want for the season, or if you have any questions or any information that you want staff to either pull up tonight or come back with next week, we'd be glad to try to accommodate that. So the recommendations that came out of that group were maintaining the current 3-year rotational harvest strategies for area 2 through 6, remaining open to hand scrape for no more than 2 months during any given harvest season.
That's rough.
And putting area 1 back into the rotation for the 2026-2027 season, leaving it closed to any harvest for this upcoming season. Probably the biggest talking point that this group might have to consider tonight is reconfiguring area 7 and 8 in the upper Rappahannock, which aren't currently managed in a rotation, but as we know, have sort of been having these short seasons here, but open every year. Configuring those into distinct 3 management zones to support a new rotational strategy in this area. And the revised area 8 would sort of be centered around Moratico Bar. The revised area 7 would be primarily the southern, sort of western side of area 7 with Wicks from Punch Bowl on down to Wicks there. And then a new area 10 would be the area across the river, including that whole sort of northern shore and Manaskin Bluff. With area 7 scheduled to be open for this coming season, followed by area 10 and then the revised area 8 the following year. This is sort of a rough map of what those 3 new rotational areas would look like. Look at that, it made the laser pointer work anyway. So Maratico Bar is here. This would be the new Area 8. Formerly Area 8 kind of ran right across here and included Manaskin Bluff. But this would be the new Area 7 would come up a little bit further to include a portion of Area 8, as well as the recently planted Punch Bowl, and then all the other areas named bars in Area 7. Area 10 would include the Manaskin Bluff area that we've recently planted, as well as the whole sort of North Shore on down to where it comes into Area 6.
Andrew, the line in the center there, is that offshore of the Wix's edge and all? Is that off in the deeper water? Right there, your line down the center?
Yeah, no, that pretty much comes right down the middle of the channel, kind of hugging the northern side there. Yeah.
So all of upper and lower Wix's, all that would be still on the west side?
That's correct, yeah.
Okay.
So basically kind of be trying to use the channel as a natural divider
Okay.
between the
Yeah.
area, the new Area 7 and the new Area 10.
And what might be helpful, just from structure for this meeting, is maybe go through the Rappahannock, get some feedback from this committee based on that subgroup, get some ideas on what the committee likes, what they don't like, what the Rappahannock might look like for this up-and-coming season, and we can get some general consensus from this group to put together a draft so that everyone can digest that draft, and then in 2 weeks from now, we can actually take some votes. So that this might be maybe just some structure for us to kind of look at the Rappahannock and not to get too far in. We'll just kind of go through area by area and kind of come to consensus and have some good discussion. We don't really need any consensus votes tonight, but it would be helpful to have some guidance from not only the recommendations from that subgroup, but also the committee and possibly the public, so that we can kind of put together a draft that kind of represents everyone's thoughts. So just as an idea of how we might want to move through that.
Question, what's the acreage difference between where we're coming from and what this proposes?
In terms of the actual acreage of the area that's open, or the, they're roughly similar. I don't have that offhand, but they're pretty close to the same acreage. And it's really trying to be like areas. So for example, the standing stocks in Area 7 and 10 are pretty similar right now, if you were to look at it. Maratico Bar, the area surveyed, they're about as close as you can get to being like areas and still have it make sense geographically. And again, stuff can change in time, but the actual number of oysters that we survey and count there are similar. And the acreage of the actual river bottom is similar, but how much area is fished in one versus fished in the other, if one's open and the other's not, it's sort of, we'll see. I think the boats tend to go where they know oysters are, but there might be, it's possible there's some more areas that aren't regularly worked along this North Shore, but they're roughly similar is the short
I think it'd be great if some of that acreage could increase. Is there any concern if that happened that there would be any shortage? I know the shell is a finite resource that we talk about, but do you think that could keep up with some of these expansions?
Well, I guess we're not opening any new area to harvest. It would just be harvested in a rotation. So the same total acreage would be open in over that 3-year period. But so it would really depend on likely how much effort these areas got versus how much effort they're currently getting and whether replenishment could keep up. So if all the boats went there for all 2 months, you know, it'd be more effort than it's getting now, focused in a smaller area.
Thanks for clarifying.
So, Madam Chair, what's being done, the new Area 7, new Area 10, the majority of that from like Smoky Point down was Area 7. That's both sides of the river. And then you had Area 8 up above. So it's basically taking some acreage from each 8 and 7 and making it 3 areas instead of just 2.
Andrew, have we ever planted anything from what you call, maybe right from there, what you call that, Manuskin? Yeah, further up in the cove there? I've never seen anybody work there, and I mean, a little ways, but not all that in there. Is that anything ever been planted in there?
Not recently. I think Manaskin Bluff, the area that we have planted,
Yeah,
had
that-
been
I know
planted
that's true, yeah.
in the 80s, but
Right.
I offhand, I don't recall anything further in this cove area there. That's not to
Well,
say
what's
that-
the good of opening something that ain't got no oysters on it?
Well, this area, I guess, has been open before, so it's not a new
Yeah,
area.
but nobody works it.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, 'cause there's nothing there.
So I guess, just for reference, Area 8 used to sort of cut across right here like this.
Yeah, that's what it used to,
Area
yeah.
was, this whole area was open when Area 8 was open.
Yeah, and the upper half was, yeah.
Including this cove area here. This had been open when Area 8 was open.
Andrew, y'all didn't plan anything about where your laser is 2 or 3 years ago?
We did on Manaskin Bluff here, yeah.
Was it further up, like closer to Belle Isle than out there near that red beacon? I remember crabbing up there when y'all were planting. It seemed like
it's
it was further up the river than where we typically work on Manaskin Bluff.
It went a little ways up, but I don't know if you can just make out that polygon,
Yeah, I
but it's
see it.
roughly here, just sort of inside that red beacon there. But it's a pretty good-sized area that was
It is.
planted up there.
It's not my personal opinion, and Richie and Tommy could probably speak more to this, but the oysters aren't quite as marketable on that side of the river if you were to not have the option of the other side of the river. There are some areas down there above and below Greenvale that have what, in my opinion, is a prettier oyster, but on that area 10, I think it would be a tough go throughout that whatever year that rotation was in there if we were to split this into 3 areas.
Yeah, that area definitely, it's a much newer area, so those oysters are much younger. I mean, the area, some of the ones in 7 and 8 are probably 4, 5, 6-year-old oysters maybe potentially if they weren't harvested. And these areas were recently shelled, so those are probably, what you're looking at are those oysters that are market size but not marketable, and those are 2-year-old oysters from a really heavy spat set up there. So that would be one of the reasons for not harvesting it this year, but allowing that more time to grow for next year.
Andrew, can you scroll down further on 7 there, down towards Tolz's point?
Not on this map
Can't-
here, but I can
I mean,
pull-
does it go down to where originally 7 started?
Correct, yeah,
Okay.
yeah, so it goes all the way down to Area 6.
So 10 goes all the way down to Tolz's?
Yes, yeah, they both, Area 7 and 10
Not quite
together
that one.
go all the way down to the
Okay.
normal, or Area 6.
Okay,
Those areas that
Yeah.
okay.
So Area 6 would stay unchanged. Area 7 and 10 are a little piece of the lower part of Area 8, but then all of Area 7 too. And just for reference, Areas 2 and 4 would be scheduled to be on this year's rotation along with, if this were to be adopted, Area 7, so that would be the rotation with the,
6 would have to be another year on that?
correct, yep, 6 would be next year.
Okay.
1 and 6 would be in the rotation with Area 10 next year, based on the working group's recommendation.
Madam Chair. I want to thank Dr. West and Dr. Mann for this report. Good job as always. I'm looking at this and I have a few things with it. I agree with Area 10, that might be a wash on that. It's a 3-year rotation that we have that in there. I just think we're going to be putting more stress on these areas. I know you're doing a more rotation, but they've been in this since 2020, I believe. We've been doing this up there. I think 22 is when we started this 1 month and 1 month. And I guess, you know, you can ask Tommy can agree, and some of these other watermen, they've left those rocks coming in at the same time they started. I really don't see any less catch on them. It's gotten the same as the day they started, the day they ended. But I just believe we're going to be putting more pressure on 8 and 7 with those amount of boats in a smaller area. I don't know if we want to get into that or not.
It's definitely something the committee can discuss for sure. There's some concern. That's what we would like to hear from you all, information like that to take back and discuss at the staff level.
Andrew, are they recommending 1 month in Area 7 or 2 months?
The recommendation was for no more than 2 months in any one of those areas, so it could be less. And then on a 3-year rotation would be, but no more than 2 months. And again, a lot of that depends on if there's overlap and how many boats are there. 2 months with 20 boats is very different than 2 months with 80 boats, as we all know.
Tommy?
Dr. Mann, hearing some of this feedback and in your discussions, how do you think it would look instead of splitting this area down the middle, basically doing an upper and lower, where you captured some of these better rocks in Area 7, in Area 10? What?
Well, first of all, it's Roger, please. We're friends here.
You've earned it.
No, we're friends here. I mean, the base in this discussion, okay, I'm a big fan of rotational harvest. I always have been. And I think, you know, everyone in this room realizes what a good thing it's been for the Rappahannock. This area, as it sort of is existed prior to today and prior to this, there's always been a matter of there's oysters there, what do we do with it? And yeah, we've sort of tiptoed through it and it hasn't been too bad. But so the question is, that, you know, and at the moment, and you know, these people here who spend a lot more time on the boat than me can tell you that we're doing quite well with recruitment in the Rappahannock at this point in time, including places upriver. So if you view this as an area that will sort of grow into the fishery, we're sort of at the start where we're a little bit ahead of asking if it continues to improve, what do we want to do with it? We're going to do this sort of on-off every year where we sort of sit and talk about what we're going to do, and we never quite fix what we're going to do with it. We've set in place the rotations downstream, and sometimes we've messed with them a little bit. I don't get up and shout about it, but it does give me a little bit of heartburn when we take things out of rotation, because there's a very sound basis for doing it. And so what I'd like to do is to sort of be a little bullish with the idea of asking, if you want to look at this area upstream and it continues to improve, let's think about where we're going to put some boundaries in this, and we'll do a rotation in this as well. So when we sort of sat down to look at this, those of us who did, the question was, and it's always an enforcement problem, how's the simplest way to cut this up so that the areas are more or less equal, where we don't end up with a problem in enforcement? And drawing a line straight down the middle of the channel was the simplest way to start at this. And I think, as both the gentlemen have said so far, this is up here for a discussion. If you don't like where we've drawn the line, I mean, I'm fine. You guys spend a lot more time out here. What I'd like to do with it, though, is to ask you, if you want to put this into a rotation, what's the easiest way to get it into a system that we can do it and we can all agree on where we'll get more or less equal productivity every year if it continues to go the way it does? And so this is thrown up here as the first discussion. Jim and I thought it probably wasn't a bad one, but, you know, we're not the oracle here. Let's hear some other options if you want to, you know, put them out there. But I do strongly encourage you to think about this whole swath of the river as it is now sort of becoming more productive, to think about it in the same vein as we did, you know, 15 plus years ago when we were talking about the lower part. Let's cut it up, let's rotate it, and let's stick to it. So I'm open to suggestions. You know, if you think there's a better way where we can spread this around, that's fine.
Follow up. Andrew, with Missy and Vernon and you, if we did do a line that sort of separated upper and lower, where would you view that line that you were capturing as closely as you could, equal amounts of the stock, that you weren't like taxing one area or the other?
It's
and still make it enforceable.
Right. I mean, the one obvious sort of area where you could cut it, given that there's probably not a ton of oysters here, I mean, you could include something like that. Maybe keep Punch Bowl and Manaskin together, and then Area 7 would be basically the normal Area 7, and maybe come a little bit up into there, but I'm not, you know, again, that's just sort of two areas, and I think Area 7, again, based on the stock assessment of what we survey there versus what we survey around Punch Bowl, they're similar. But I think there's probably a lot more of those little areas in Area 7 up there. And again, same thing with Moratico. There's areas that we aren't surveying where probably people are oystering there. So that would be in terms of one potential line, is sort of leave the top where it is, but maybe incorporate Punch Bowl and Manaskin on that third year, since they're both sort of the newest shell plants in the area.
Is there a decisive line, any of the watermen that work that area between Waterview and Smoky Point, enough of a divide there that you're just not running one to the other?
I don't think so. Personally, I mean, you can, whether you're inshore or offshore, you can see boats scattered all up and down there. There are places where we can work from Smoky Point right on down almost to LaGrange. You can find somewhere where I don't know where you can call a dead zone, so to speak, where you're not able to harvest oysters. But looking at that, if you did draw that line, say above where Waterview is across there with Punch Bowl and Manaskin, I still think that Area 10 is weak. Personally, I would like to see, if we're looking at a rotation, to do a 2-year rotation with 7 and 8 as is, compared to trying to make a third area.
I guess what we'd always done in the past, just to remind folks, is we tried to compare or pair a weaker rotation with a stronger area. So 2 and 4, pretty strong rotation. 6 and 1 had been the strong rotation with 6, but 6 has come a long way too. So that would be what would be coming in with Area 10. So that's just something to look at it, not necessarily just this area, but the other 6 areas as well, where you're doing, again, if you're having them all standalone seasons,
Right.
and trying to have a 6 months or 5 month season to Rappahannock, then you're kind of right where you are.
I personally like the idea of a rotation, whether it's what you just described or whether it's just something. I like the idea of both harvest and replenishment, knowing what we're doing, as opposed to, having to sit here every year and decide whether we're going to be able to do something up there or not. And from a replenishment standpoint, to know that you've got something that's closed you're going to replenish and something that's going to open. And this area has really become an integral part of our marketing strategy in Virginia. The James River is a good half-shell area. This is a really good area during the holidays that we have a premium product. So just getting to some point that we know we've got something to look forward to up there, regardless of whether it's 3 areas, 2 areas, but at least having some sort of rotation that we can plan on what's going to be open. Now, that doesn't mean it's always going to be good, but we would know, and likewise, staff would have an idea of what replenishment, what area they were working towards replenishing.
Can I ask a question here? I mean, I think that was a really interesting comment that you made about Manaskin potentially being an oyster that would be less desirable. The nature of what we do in our surveys doesn't get that sort of deep in the weeds with respect to that. We go out, we count them, we size them, and then we move on.
Right.
Over the course of the fall, 1,200, 1,500, 1,600 stations. I mean, it's pretty frenetic in order to get the information in. So, to both you as a man who harvests it, and Tommy and anyone else, so Tommy says this area up here is a pretty oyster for the peak season and the holidays. So if we go into this and you're left with the potential new area 7 1 year producing you that premium oyster, the new area 10, is that going to give you an oyster of lesser quality? And I mean, I don't know the answer to that, but if there is a history amongst all of you that tells us that, those on the south side or the western side of the channel are going to give you better oysters, does that come into your debate, and does that come into something that you should give back to us?
I think personally, to Corey's point, yes, and I think that was sort of where some of the thought of doing something differently this way as opposed to this way in my mind comes in. And it sort of hedges your bets on spat set too, because we see years where one side does better than the other. You're sort of hedging your bets once you do replenishment, that you've got two opportunities for typically where Andrew's Pointer, I mean, you guys do the survey, but in my estimation, it's always seemed to be a better set to the Essex Middlesex side. But
Yeah, and I mean, Manaskin had gotten 2 years of phenomenal spat set up there too, so I mean, that's part of what you see.
And as you replenish, I'm sure it would be better down the other side too. I mean, the other side of it, you've got a good point. It's probably been a lot more substrate on the other side too.
Well, I mean, we can try to chop this up in a couple different ways and present that to you all. We'll try to put something out online by the end of this week to try to have you all have some chance to look at it before we come back here. And again, the committee doesn't have to make the same recommendations as the oyster panel. Anyway.
I'm sure. Is there any historic data of plantings long ago in, say, Area 7, New Area 10, New Area 8 by the state? Looking at historic bars on the northern, eastern side of, that New Area 10.
There is some limited accuracy, but yeah, no, like Punch Bowl, for example, the new area that we planted at Manaskin were both older shell plants from the 80s. So we have a layer that's pretty good going back to the 80s and some of that even earlier in there. So most of the areas where it's a named bar likely at some point have had some level of replenishment over the going on almost 100 years of the replenishment program here.
I guess that's what I'm asking. Are there any more historic bars down below Manaskin Bluff, below the Red Beacon there, or anything like that that's been planted historically?
Offhand, I don't recall seeing anything, but Manaskin Bluff, that area that we did plant, it was one of those, I think, 80 shell plants.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, I want to agree with, agree with Corey. I like the idea of that, breaking it up in two areas, and I agree with Tommy, we need to get something out there. And a 2-year rotation, to me, would be fine, because there's a big orchards out there. I don't know if a 3-year would be too much. But that said, the line it already has between 7 and 8, would that suffice for the watermen up there? Is that pretty much the same line that you suggest that we have now?
There was nothing there anyway.
What has been, the line where it's, below Punch Bowl going across to the Red Beacon, below Manaskin. Personally, I think that would be a good spot to split it into 2 areas and do, a 2-year rotation, if that's the way we're gonna go. And I do agree with that, like that as far as replenishment. It'll, you can focus more on one area each year as far as putting shells and seed back compared to having what we're doing right now, hitting it from, spread out probably over 15 miles. When you gotta go all the way from Maratico down to Little Wixes.
Let's make a long day with a tugboat.
Correct,
Yeah, I think as it stands now, 10 wouldn't be very good if that was to be open, and I'm sure you're talking about 3 years down the road, but it's only, like say, Manaskin, that's only a good place, that's a decent amount of oysters, so I pretty much agree with Corey and everybody else. I think if we run the line back where it used to be and open it across the river with a 2-year rotation, I think that would be sufficient. The last 4 years we've worked on a 30-day 1-year rotation, and it's held up reasonably good. Produced a good quality oyster, so I think 2 would be plenty of time on it.
Madam Chair, if I may, I have to agree with Corey too. Just leave the 7 and 8 line where it is and rotate that in 2 years would be my recommendation with that.
The other thing a rotation gets us to is when seeds planted, we're not gonna be harvesting that same year. I think, I don't know, we've done a lot of that, but the opportunity's there for it to be harvested with a rotation. And when you do, when and if you planted seed there, it would get the opportunity to not be harvested the same year it was planted.
So I'll ask an open question. Who's going to draw a line, or are we going to draw a line? How are you going to do that?
Well, I think that they're talking about leaving the line as it is.
Leave it as it is? Okay.
That would be,
Yeah, somewhere from that Red Beacon below Manasket Bluff over there to somewhere around Paris Creek Channel, somewhere, I think maybe just north of Paris Creek Channel is the way it goes across.
And I'm assuming Area 9 would just, the line on the upper part of 8 and 9 would not be affected, and that would remain a hand-tong area. We wouldn't have any conflict with that line.
that's correct, yeah, so this is that, where that line is there now. Right there, top water view. So that would be the unchanged area there. While we're on the Rappahannock, so I guess, we don't have to take a vote, but are there any, in terms of season lengths and opening dates for 2-4 and preference on area 7 or 8 with this, only one of those areas being open that a committee wants to propose tonight, or?
I would, I mean, what we did last year, I thought worked well. My recommendation would be Area 4, October 15th. Just like we did last year, and then kind of mirror Area 2 with what we did for 3 this year. And whatever we do in the upper Rappahannock, the same that we did last year, December, January.
So I think this is last year's season where we had, so you're saying area 2 for this sort of month and a half season there, and then 7 or 8, one of them for the full 2 months in December and January, and then area 4 in February.
I would do just the opposite, because I think Area 4 will probably be a little bit better quality in October than Area. Yes.
It'll also cost you a little less conflict as far as crab potters still.
Yeah.
Good point.
October.
So 4 first, then area 7 or 8, and then area 2 for the second half there.
Is there a preference on 7 or 8 based on that rotation?
Madam Chair, if I may. Andrew, do you have a stock assessment after those seasons this year?
Yes.
I know, I have private ground there in Short Marica Bar, and I have not seen any spat set at all up there yet. I've got some shell strings out, on my own stuff there, and I have not seen very little. So I wonder about that upper area with it being as fresh as it is. Maybe 7 might be a better candidate for this year.
Yeah, I think in terms of, we don't have anything that will have this spat set on it yet, so we just have a fall survey and a spring survey, but nothing that would capture spat set yet.
No, I understand that. I'm looking at what was left after.
Well, the good news is the data supports the observations, is that both areas look pretty good. There was minimal impact that we saw in the survey. but I can pull that up here if you'd like real quick. Roger will yell at me like he always does when I don't. When he tells me that oysters can't be measured to that many decimal places, but I just threw this together really quick here for these purposes. But this is the area 7 and 8 combined for the Upper Rappahannock. This is our post-harvest survey, so done this spring. You're looking at markets right there. You know, still actually higher number of market densities than
It's amazing.
than our pre-harvest. So the spat did come down a little bit, but I mean everything did keep on growing. So 7 and 8 combined, it actually looked a little bit better after that month-long season than before.
So that's for both?
I can pull it out individually by area if you want, but that's for both. Yeah.
I would agree with Mr. Deal's comments on Area 7, and
But area 7, yeah.
and this may be a little controversial, but I think once we decide what we're gonna do up there, we sort of need to stick to it, and you know, we start hearing about extensions before it ever closes. I would be in favor of kind of deciding what we're gonna do up there, and that would be that, as opposed to, I mean, we've got 3 really good areas in the Rappahannock, so we'd have a good area to go to when 7 closed, but sort of make our minds up of what we're doing and be done with it.
Short of some sort of catastrophic event, you know,
Yeah, area 8 was not quite as good as area 7, I guess I would say.
That's what I was asking, you know, what was left. I feel like 7 would probably have more oysters on it this year. Give 8 a break, swap it next year.
But it's, I mean, traditionally 7 has had more oysters than 8, you know.
And these are areas that we've put a lot of seed, a lot of shell,
Yeah.
and have had record-setting spat sets. So they're be hard to ruin them over 3 years. After that, who knows, depending on how things change. But there should be, knock on wood, the disease pressure up there isn't that nearly as much of a concern as other areas, and the spat sets have been good, and hopefully the salinity stays high enough for everything lives. So yeah, that's a lot of things to throw out there into the world right there. But all those ifs, it does look good for the next 2 or 3 years there. I think I captured that, but, so that's area 7 in the middle, area 4 first, area 2 at the end for Rappahannock. For that
Half month in October.
half month in October, with a full 2 months in December and January for area 7.
And the time limit would stay the same like we did last.
I think that seems to have worked out well, keeps everybody there when they should be. All right, that's one river off the recommendation list there. All right. All right, let me jump back here. All right, I figured that would be the first thing to take off there, since that's a lot to talk about that, but we'll take that back and discuss it at the staff level. We'll try to put something on the Rappahannock together in a draft season to put out here for y'all to take a look at before our next scheduled meeting. Which brings us down the bay a little bit to the York. So again, we're talking about recommendations that came out of that work group, specifically on rotational management area. So folks may recall that the York has been sort of taken out of that rotation here recently with some sort of short seasons. So the recommendation was to re-implement that 3-year rotational strategy, which was York River Area 1, 2, and then an area in the Mobjack, which had been primarily poultices and toe steaks. There may be some additional areas in the Mobjack. We can kind of make those areas a little bit bigger. Right now, those are just 2 very small bars in the Mobjack, and it's not really comparable to the York when the York York's kind of funny. Some years it's great, it can hold 80 boats, and some years it doesn't. But when the York is working, it doesn't compare to what's in the Bobjack. So we're proposing, the group was proposing to add an additional area to that Bobjack rotation year, potentially looking at areas in the Pianka tank, or maybe there's some other areas. There's some other discussion about an extended Patentong area, but if there's some other areas that can be added to make that Bobjack rotation a little bit stronger, maybe try to do that to sort of make it more comparable to Area 1 in the York. But again, limiting these harvest areas to no more than 2 months, and again, that's no more. If the resource isn't there, you know, it might behoove us to have a shorter season there. With Area 2 and Timber Neck scheduled to open for this year, just as a reminder, because we've been out of that rotation, Area 2 did get shell plant this year, so it needed it. So this is a Timber Neck rock. But again, this is the recommendations that came out of that work group, followed by Pages, so the upper area there, the following season, and then the third year of the rotation, giving the York River a rest and having areas open in the Bobjack Bay, Polson Toe Stake, and potentially some additional areas to make that rotation stronger there.
JC, you reached out to me, I think the first week of,
Yeah.
of the harvest of the Pianka tank, and when that area was too impressive.
Well, it definitely, it needs to be worked. I mean, we did find out pretty quickly. I think Mike came in, he worked an hour. We worked the whole day, and I think we had 12 bushels, maybe something like that. One of the boats stayed, and they got 16 bushels there. So that was the only 3 boats I know that worked it there. It was extreme amount of orange coral just matted over top of everything there. It was just, everything was covered. You could not even think about getting a half a lick of oysters in your drudge because the orange coral would just fill it right up immediately. And the oysters weren't that big. They're not growing. They were 3 inches to 3 1/4 in that range. You very seldom ever seen a 4-inch oyster. So I think all 3 areas need to be, it needs to be worked. It's fairly shallow water, but that's the only way you're gonna get it to where it would be halfway harvestable. You'd have to go in there and work it and try to move some of that orange coral, and the only way you can do that is catch it, put it in barrels and take it off in deep water and dump it. I mean, it's I've been working a piece of private ground for 3 months, and I still catch it now after 3 months in one area. So it's very, very difficult to get it moved. And to me, I think it's a sign of a good, healthy oyster ground, you know, but it just prohibits you from catching, catching the oysters. If you're filling your drudge up with that, you're not getting oysters in it. So I think, I know we had set aside the 3 areas for like a rotation, but we may be better off maybe this year trying to get a few boats to incentivize a few boats to go in there and go and open all 3 areas, and we get them and see what happens, as far as the amount of boats and all. To me, I think that's the only way that you're going to get any work from it, Yeah.
Do you think that point A got worked to the point that it could get sets this season, or, I know people.
Karen Townsend, she worked out pretty much the whole 2 weeks that it was open. So she could tell you more. I think they worked about 10 days, actual working days. So I don't know. I know they moved a lot of it because they told me the enforcement boat was there a lot. And when they would move off the rock to dump the coral, they would watch them and they wanted to know what they were doing. They didn't understand that they were taking it away from the rock so they could work the rock, So that's what it needs. It really needs to be worked. Because I think it would help it a whole lot more than it'll hurt it. That's for sure.
We did put some shell back on Burton Point this year, just because it was sort of part of the plan there. So just so you're aware that area did get some replenishment effort this year.
Yeah.
And again, that red sponge Pianka tank is kind of known for it. So
terrible.
When we did the seed programs with the big dredges,
Yeah.
there were some places where they couldn't get
Couldn't-
through
yeah,
with
exactly, yeah.
with a full-sized heavy dredge, and they'd spend 2 or 3 days, and sometimes they quit after that. So
Yeah,
it's an
I
area
think,
where
I think
sometimes-
batting tongs would work better there, but it's too shallow. I mean, well, we worked on top, I think it was 8 foot of water, 9 foot of water. I mean, you can't bat and tong that. The shaft would be sticking out of the water. I think it would do better because you could move the stuff a whole lot quicker and you know, you'd have more versatility as far as filling the tongs and all, but of course, it's not legal there either, bat tongs, so,
You have to call them a hand pat tong.
yeah. Yeah.
Same thing in my object at Pulse Ball. It was the same thing if 4 boats worked there in a
Mhm.
month. We caught some horses there, but I mean, that's another. If you open that up just for itself,
Mhm.
York Road is on it
Mhm.
also. You had some boats there in York Road.
Yeah.
If everybody go there, it's not enough out there. You know,
Yeah.
but it needs to be, also needs to be worked, because the
Yeah.
horses are different. That's solid before you got to move the grass before you can do anything there. I mean,
Yep. Okay.
So on this, Andrew, the Mob Jack, Yankee tank, you would open them concurrently and you take your pick where you went. It wouldn't be we wouldn't go to one area and then go to the next. It would just be, you decide where you're gonna go and they're open at the same time. Is that what you're thinking?
I'm sorry, I think I missed the first part of that there. For the Pianki tank you're saying, or for all
Yeah.
3 of these areas?
Well, when you had, looking at the Mob Jack area, when that was the rotation outside of 1 and 2, and then if the Pianki tank was brought in, it would be Mob Jack and Pianki tank at the same time, so that harvesters would take their choice. You either go
Correct,
here or
yeah.
there.
Yep, so try to have that Mob Jack in addition to whatever was proposed in the Pianki tank, and potentially another area if we can find something.
So we take I guess the point what I was wondering is, we'll take the pressure off one or the other. It wouldn't be the whole fleet in one place and then.
And again, I guess the schedule for this year proposed by the work group would be Area 2 coming back into that rotation, sort of as a standalone area there, Timberneck in New York.
Is that what you said was just Shell?
That's correct, yeah.
Should we leave that?
Again, it's when they've been worked out of rotation, it's hard to get the shell out of there when it needs it.
when it was on from last year, right?
Correct, yeah,
Yeah.
and so was Pages as well. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, okay.
What do you have the survey results afterwards for Timberneck and Pages? I mean, is
Not since it's been
Pages-
shelled, but,
What is Pages, would you flip-flop is what I'm saying, since we just shelled Timberneck?
based on the fall survey, Pages has a little bit higher market density than Timberneck does, yes.
What part of 2 did you shell, Andrew? Did you shell the edge on the western side above Ernie's Pound, or did y'all go off into deeper water and?
On Timberneck there?
Yeah.
Pretty much the
No,
entire.
I thought you said Area 2 in the right valley.
No, this is Area 2 in the.
Oh,
Yep,
no,
yep.
okay, all right. That's why I was confused.
Yeah, no, we pretty much were right on the rock there on Timberneck.
Okay.
We didn't do anything on Area 2 this year in the Rappahannock. So that is a possibility. I mean, Pages was open last year and it was right after we replenished it, but that's had 2 years now. This would be the second year after it had shell put on it.
Yeah, I think I don't work down there, but I think that would be a more valid point if we were gonna put that in some sort of rotation.
So Pages first, so flip-flop. Just to confuse things, New York goes low to high down river versus.
It's backwards.
So Pages 25, 26 season, is that what you're saying?
That sounds like what's coming out here is flipping the Area 1 Pages for Area 2 for this year. again, I think Mobjack hasn't had any replenishment here recently, but it's had relatively light effort. But the boats that are going there are doing all right, but it's maybe 10 on a good day, but most of the time 4, 5, 6, if that.
It was
So,
3, it was 2, to the last 2 weeks.
okay.
Then it was 2 more. There was 4 boats total last.
And New York didn't have that much pressure here this last season either. I mean, it was.
Like you said, with catching the limit, that no problem. You mean, even with the grass, like you said, the red puzzle was, you had to move it for the catch, but the horses would work.
Okay. In terms of York this year, any recommendations just for that draft season on a time frame? I think there'd been discussion about later, like January time frame, in terms of crab pots being on top of the rock in that early part of fall. But is that January, February season in New York? I believe is what we did last year there.
I think Corey had a comment.
I just wanted, Mike, I wanted your opinion on what you would think about that 3-year rotation there. I mean, you've been there a whole lot long, been there a whole lot more than all of us put together, as far as ages and timber deck and the Mobjacks last gang tank areas as the 3rd year. If you thought that would suffice to work in there.
It need to be work.
I mean, would you think that doing that once every 3 years like that would be something that would work?
Yeah, I don't see why it wouldn't.
How much effort, I'm sorry, Madam Chair, how much effort is on those pieces?
Depends on what's going, when other places open up, you got Janesville open up. You can forget, nowhere's gonna produce like Janesville.
Yes.
That's the way it is. It gets worked most and it produces the most. It comes back, it's all natural. You know?
So essentially in New York, you're just talking about 2 areas to rotate. Is that right, Andrew?
Yeah, with that 3rd year, nothing in New York being open to hand scrape, just having.
Mobjack and Biang Tank?
Yep.
Okay. All right.
Every 3rd year, we close.
And again, like as Mike was saying there, I mean, New York's had some years when it's been good and there has been other areas open. There'll be 80, 90 boats there and they'll work a month and everybody will have their limit. And other years there'll be 12 there the whole time. So it really kind
I
of
was
depends.
for to have a Shab Tongue area, York Road. Yeah. But really, stand and think about it, you ain't got nobody Shab Tongue. Down the road. And I'm pretty sure you'll check the dispatch, it's not there. Or when a couple of years ago, they died off, Andrew, you know, but down the road, my feeling, we're gonna have to open that up for 2 weeks, let it go there, turn that over, if we're gonna get anything. Because if that's set there, it's just gonna scarf over, it's not gonna do nobody no good. And I was behind having that Shab Tongue area, but it's not there now. Down the road, we're gonna have to speak on, no more than 2 weeks to open it up for the trucks to go up there, to turn that over, to make it, you mean, try to get something so spat go on it. Which I'm sure you know more than what I do. Y'all's been up there checking. It's not the horses that was there. I see 100 boats work there on that one little rock at Aberdeen. Caught the limit every day. That was 24 bushels. I mean, every day for one whole month. But it's not that now, it's turned around, you know what I mean?
Yeah, and well, one of the reasons for taking that area, and again, a shorter season is different, but if it's so shallow there that it's very, very hard to replenish that with the big barges there, but that's something that we could.
Yeah, it's hard to do anything. Like I said, all I'm saying is go there, get his own spat, turn it over a little bit, because 2 or 3 Shab Tongues is not gonna do it any good. It's not gonna turn it over. Yes, there's horses there, but it's not enough there now for it. But who knows what other nature will bring back or what had come. I think it's the same with all the places.
So are there any, on New York, I've got pages this year for that, I think we did a 1.5-month season last year there. So we'd be looking at, I believe, York River this year. That'd be February, and those first 2 weeks in March is sort of that area that we did last year, or we could have that in January. But again, last year we had Bobjack open and both areas in New York were open, sort of overlapping there a little bit. So this year, probably about,
Like you had it last year, it worked out, I mean, but that's, and I don't want to speak, I mean, but everything worked out good. It seemed for everybody that was open last year.
Yeah, I agree with Mike on that.
so having everything open again this year, sort of for that short season, but Pages being open longer than Timberneck. That'd be sort of the opposite there, yeah.
Well, it's hard to say till you go down working, you might not want to, you know, how can you say till you go there?
Madam Chair. Just for clarification, it sounds like what you guys are saying is that all three of those areas are covered up, need to be worked, can't get a spat strike because there's so much grass and curl on.
There's a lot of grass up there, and all the places need to work, some turn it over, so it only helps it.
So does that make a lot of sense to put it in a 3-year rotation if it's already not worked enough?
It wasn't Orsa's dad that been there, Andrew, you know that, what, 7, 8 years ago, what is his name? A lot of horses died off.
Well, I guess these areas had been in a 3-year rotation and had seen replenishment, shell planting, and area 1 and 2 in New York one was replenished this year, and the other was replenished last year, so they haven't yet had a full 3 years. So really, Pages really should have been closed until this coming season, a year from now, basically. And the same thing with Timberneck for 2 years.
They're already in a 3-year rotation.
We took them out of that, I guess, but that would have been sort of the normal rotation, is we would have planted it right after their harvest. There would have been two spat sets, and then it would have been open to harvest. So again, since we went out of rotation in these areas, what had worked to get them to where they were was that 3-year rotation, and that's sort of what Alex's studies and sort of what our data has shown is that these 3-year rotations with replenishment maximize your market oysters as a result of those 3-year rotations, particularly in places like the York and the Rappahannock River. It's a little different in the James because it's just such a different area, but those 3-year rotations have been working along with replenishment in these areas, and I think that's my understanding of why this work group is recommending that these areas be put back into these rotations, because it was really producing a good quality oyster there, and there was something you could plan replenishment activity around.
Yeah, I don't feel the York River is the Rappahannock, I don't feel it's with the James River.
It's in between, right?
It's in between, I feel that what you're saying, I agree with. Just look at it, then right this year, you have to do something different, because it's not the Orsa's dad that we had. I'll be the first to say that.
Madam Chair, if I may, we also have to factor in, we had a huge disease kill
Yeah,
off.
with that, that's right, we had
Last year,
disease.
I mean, we lost 60-70%.
That's right.
Of that, so.
You can definitely see that in some of the harvest areas, like we were talking about it happening there was definitely some mortality with that high salinity year.
Yeah, I think the public is doing as well as the private up there. It's really coming back, so.
Madam Chair. One thing to keep in mind, if we are gonna get back to a rotation, or we've got to give a little bit in some of these areas, it's a good year to do it with the James and Rappahannock looking as good as they are, that we can spread the boats out and still have.
Yeah.
And hopefully, it would be nice, whatever happens in York, that some of those local boats would be able to stay there and work. And I personally think that's got a lot to do with their success right now, is the way that we're spreading boats out. And again, to Mike's point, 80 boats or whatever in that one area in York River, we're not seeing that anywhere really. We're doing a good job of keeping people spread out.
And I don't need to tell this committee this much at all, but really, having the James and the Rappahannock pretty much about split things in half over here, and then having, I know Dan and Don were having trouble calling in, but the Pocomoke and the Tangier, when it's good, that keeps about 50 or 60 boats over there.
Yeah.
But when any one of those areas isn't open or isn't good, those boats tend to go to where it is. So I think that has been working well, is making sure that those three biggest areas have been overlapping with when the fleet's gonna be wanting those oysters and keeping them as comparable as they can, so people, one, don't have to travel, and two, you know, it spreads that fleet out. And then, not to discredit anyone's favorite river, but a lot of these other areas just don't hold the fleet the same way. New York and Mobjack and the Great Wacomico, to a certain extent, Blackberry, those areas just, they're not gonna have 90 boats in them, so.
We hope not.
Yeah.
What's been done, I think it's working pretty good.
That would be bad.
We did it 1 year.
Yeah, it took us 4 years to get over it.
Right, yeah, you know what happens when it does, yeah. So I'm not hearing a strong recommendation from the committee to change much in New York, other than kind of leave it as is, with Pages being the preferred area open there. Any strong preference on Mobjack there being out of rotation, rested, left alone?
Personally, I would like to revisit, you know, in the next meeting, just some sort of rotation, that leave something alone, particularly if you're gonna put the Yankee tank in the mix.
Okay. So I'll kind of leave this as a placeholder, but with at least general consensus to flip-flop York Timberneck for Pages for this year. Was there anything else anyone wanted to discuss on
How
this
do you
rotation?
feel?
I'll kind of take this into account and discuss it internally here. And again, it really kind of depends on the areas and the effort. And, you know, I can't predict that well, but if James and Rappahannock are good, like you said, these areas aren't going to need to support that much, but they tend to do better if you at least give them a couple years after they've had that replenishment.
Like I said, Rappahannock, James River is pretty much taken care. Like I said, we only had a handful of boats. If I was open anywhere, I would have Mobjack open again, because that ain't getting nothing on. If you want to take York River, I'm not one to speak, nobody to look at me on having something, but it's just the way.
From a replenishment perspective, the York has had 2 recent replenishment efforts, so you're gonna optimize your spat set if you did get it this year by leaving those areas closed for a season, so.
So that would be talking about whatever we do in Yankee tank and Mobjack as this year's rotation.
Yeah, leave that, if you want to take York River out of it, and let it, if you feel that's, you know, I feel we had some big oysters there, but it wasn't a lot of small oysters in the York River last year. But Mobjack has got it's a good, and you've got other places open, not everybody's going to go there. But I don't feel, but Mobjack's not that big.
Right.
Toe Steak, you don't have just a little place there to go. You may have a handful of boats go there, as long as everything else is open, but that's not for me to, I want to choose, and someone look at me having something shut down, but like I do know, which I've seen, shut it down, if we get a whole lot more of them.
And that's something that we've done here recently in New York that's worked well, is had those areas open to hand tong, and that gives everyone a real good idea of what's coming along. If you have hand tong boats there, you'll know that when it's been opened afterwards. I think when we did that, when there were 80 boats working there in New York Timberneck last time, I think there were 12 hand tong boats getting 28 bushels there. Then 80 boats came along and did fine for 2 months.
Leave the hand tong there, like I said, the little area you got for the hand tonging, but if you think that it's best for take the York River out of it this year, like I said, the Rappahannock, I didn't see no different in the Rappahannock last year than what I seen the year before last, in 7 and 8. No difference in the catch wise or nothing. But like I said, every river's not going to be, it's not going to do what James River and Rappahannock is.
Well, I think we can work that discussion into at least a draft recommendation to bring back to this group and discuss again more internally here. But if I'm capturing it right, it's look at Mobjack and Yankee tank for this current year's rotation.
And then you would go Pages, you think, and then
Timberneck, yep. Got a whole page of notes here filled up already. I gotta go on to the next sheet. All right, anything else on York Mobjack / P Ink Tank? All right. Moving, we're kind of jumping around geographically here, but that's just the order that we talked about things, I guess. So, I'm going back around to Great Wacomico. So, I guess last year was first year that we got out of the 2-year rotation. This area had been in no rotation. We went to a 2-year rotation, left the 2-year rotation. But the recommendation from the working group was to return to a two-year rotation with Area 1 scheduled to be open. That's the upriver area, or upriver area there, scheduled to be open for this season, with Area 2 the following season. And then to consider putting this area on a 3-year rotation if we can get some additional areas going in the vicinity of Blackberry Hangs. So if there's a possibility of, getting some more areas replenished there by that 3rd year. Again, these 3-year rotations based on a lot of observational data tend to work better, but again, different systems. But that was a recommendation coming out of this work group, was to try to at least return to a 2-year rotation this year and then look at a 3-year rotation if we can going forward, with additional area out of the bay being targeted for replenishment.
I'd like to see what's written under the James River be written under the Great Wacomico. It's somewhat similar. We had very high strike year after year, and things have been growing well there the past few years. I mean, if we don't have a whole lot of pressure to it, the market conditions take care of itself. Yes, Mr. Harden and Mr. Kellen, they bought oysters there this year, and I know they were happy with what it was, and it was just as good on both areas when we left it as it was when we started. And the same thing up there with Blackberry. We had 5 to 12 boats when we were in the Great Wacomico, and we might have had 15 on average. Some of the prettier days you might have had 25 of Blackberry, but I don't see the reason for a rotation there with the spat sets that we get up there typically year after year, and the way things are starting to grow up there. I know in the past, years ago, it was always they get to 3.5 inches seemed to stop, but that does not seem to have been the case the past 3 or 4 years up there.
Madam Chair, I have to agree with Corey on this. When they opened it, Area 1 this year when they were oystered, I really didn't want Great Wacomico, but I was pleasantly surprised how good they were. Thank God. They did real well. And in this 2-year rotation, and Corey touched on it years ago, and they just didn't grow. I mean, you go out there and you leave it at the end of the season, you go back to next season, they look the same. And we work a lot of private shore in Great Wacomico, and it is phenomenal growth. And I have to agree, we have to kind of think about this like the James River. Not as great as the James River, that is phenomenal, but we have all this strike and growth going on in Great Wacomico we're fortunate to have, that we do need to work it. And this was Corey's suggestion last year to do this like it is, and I think it's worked out real well. We keep 3 months at home for the local watermen, which also takes pressure off of other areas, have them at home. But the oysters at home were phenomenal this year, and the Area 1 that was supposed to be closed was just as good as Area 2, and that had harvested the year before. So that's my take on it.
Any other comments on that? Just one of those things, I guess everyone knows the difference. Great Wacomico, it's a great river, but it's not as big as a James. So in terms of area needing replenishment, sort of what's been working in the James is we still replenish areas as they're needed in the James, but that still leaves plenty of areas to go. So in the Great Wacomico, there had been a little bit of heartburn here and there if an area needed replenishment but was scheduled to be open. But again, if it doesn't need replenishment, then we're not going to be doing that. And if it does, presumably wouldn't be going there and working that area anyway. But that's just something to, one of the benefits of those 3-year rotations is it allows you to replenish an area. It's not going to be open right away, and you get the most benefit out of that replenishment without upsetting folks who are going to have to work through a little bit of shell to get to the market oysters. But again, definitely understood the.
Madam Chair, we experiment over time, like Area 1. Maybe just something, we'll just give it our time, see how it does. It's hard to say with 1 year. Maybe let's try this for a few years and see what we get out of it.
Last year you mentioned, Rich, that about 12 boats were working that area. Is that still pretty accurate?
Mr. Rice, what is it, about 12 boats, am I correct?
When the 2 months that the Great Wacomic was open, we had 5 to 12 boats most days. And then it is a few more in Blackberry. It's February, there's a few boats that are over on the wrap for the past year, 7 or 8. This coming year, probably 7. They come back home and work, and most of them, they work on the pretty days, and that's it.
I do, regardless of where we go, I do think Andrew's got a point in that we just need to realize that when you do this and you plant shells, you're planting an area that's gonna be worked, and we just have to, when someone calls and said they're planting shells on what's gonna be worked this year, well, if you're working it every year, it's gonna, you're gonna get shells on it, so just, and I'm not disagreeing, I'm just, because I got some of those calls too, that, get planting shells on what's gonna be open this year. Well, if it's open every year and you want shells planted, you're gonna plant shells on what's open this year, so. Andrew, the area, and Corey, the area that off of Cloverdale Creek from the marshes coming down on the bay side, is anyone crabbing or gill netting ever? Historically, I just hear that was a really, really good area, similar to Blackberry, coming down the bay from.
What time, I mean, yes, there's gonna be crabbing there November, December. But as far as gill netting, no, not.
No, I was saying that area, has anyone caught oysters?
I don't know that anybody's been down there working. To be honest, Tom, is it even in where the map shows?
It's a traditional rock there, and I'm just thinking down the road.
I don't think it goes as far. Where Lee just showed me, if I'm not mistaken, I don't think our map goes that far to the southern. I don't think
It doesn't. I'm thinking about an area where it could, as we try to increase this area to a big enough area that you could have something closed and something coming, some consideration given to that area.
I think it's included in
I didn't
there.
do a good job explaining that, but.
Tom, I think it's included in the extension on the Baton Dong area. Yep. And what I see here.
Yep, so this is just what we were gonna talk about there is that extended Pat Tongue area. But I think if I can paraphrase Tommy there, he's wondering if anyone was catching any live oysters in gill nets or crab pots or something. Is that right, Tommy?
Yeah, just wondering if it's something we could eventually have a rotation with Blackberry.
Not that I know of, Tommy, but that area, after the spring run, it's really not many crab pots that go through there, and it's really not much for gill nets either.
So it wouldn't be.
Get away inshore off on the edges.
Okay, well, so I'm hearing from the committee, from this committee anyway, that not looking at much changes this year, but in terms of a season preference, what we did last year was Area 2 was open in December, Area 1 in January, and then Blackberry was February and March. So that's, again, the upriver area is Area 1. So downriver would be open first, upriver second, and then Blackberry in February and March would be no change from last year. Any more comments on that one? The James River, I think we got a spoiler there from Corey, but again, the James River is, in terms of actual oyster area where oysters exist, is just in a league of its own compared to all these other areas, with maybe the exception of the Rappahannock. But again, just a higher recruiting area. There's several thousand acres of oyster rock that we survey there every year, and it seems to be self-regulating based on market conditions and where we've replenished. So this year, for example, our replenishment was focused on that Jail Island area, Mansman Ridge, then cruisers there below the bridge in area 3 of the James. So those were the areas that had the most effort when we had that emergency closure there, when just those areas were open. So based on our survey, those are the areas that were most in need. But in other years, we'll replenish on White Shoal or Brown Shoal or Upper Thomas's, Lower Thomas's, Ballard's Marsh, wherever the area is in need, and it hasn't really been worked in a rotation. We've divided it up into a number of different areas, and have experimented with sort of stretching it out longer with partial and being closed. But here recently, we've had it sort of all the areas open for that set season, which last year went from October 15th through March. Again, October 1st was something staff was comfortable with for the James River last year. So in terms of what's there in the resource and the spat set, again, this is one of those areas that the post-harvest survey looks almost like the pre-harvest survey, just more smalls and less spat. So, but we have been having to put replenishment effort in there, but again, it's been holding up pretty well. So the work group isn't making any recommendations on implementing a rotation strategy there.
Andrew, that would be moving with the start date being October 15th, like we amended it to last year.
That would be no change from last year. We talked about staff being okay with an October 1st opening there. I think the committee wanted something different, made that recommendation. So, again, you're free to make that recommendation. We'll discuss that at the staff level again too.
Madam Chairman, with the shaft haul season being open into May, I would be in favor of opening it up on the 1st, to kind of save some of those oysters to the other end of the season.
Talking about for hand scrape October 1st?
Yeah, hand scrape October 1st to take some of the shaft haul pressure, because normally that's when we're getting them in October. We hit them early, and then everybody gets geared up, and then 15 days later we change to hand scrape. It's almost just, let's just start with the hand scraping. That'll set us up for a better place in May.
The only concern I have with it being standalone is just every boat in the bay being there. That was sort of my rationale for the 15th last year. I would obviously defer to the committee, but I do have concerns if it's the only area open for scraping October 1st of what's going to be there.
I do think we had somebody, I believe it was from the audience, that brought up the comment that if we started it October 1st and you had plenty of boats there and it was good, that they would stay and not leave, and maybe cause that many more boats on the James River for the duration of the October and November anyway.
Madam Chair, I guess I agree with Tom. We've learned Blackberry, but there's a standalone area. It's not very good. I disagree. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
I disagree with that.
I take Mr. Metcalf's point, and I see what you're trying to get at. I just the concern of the pressure.
They're still in the warm water harvest regulation in October too. So
That's correct.
October 15th does push it to kind of a little bit easier.
Yeah, so all of October is on that, would be that 11 a.m. curfew for water harvest. It sounds like we're kind of split on that 15th, or learned more? Okay.
They got a good point, and that's why we changed it last time too, because we were afraid of too many boats showing up. It's probably a non-issue with the, everybody's still crabbing and everything else. A lot of things going on early in October. But
I think that was the first time that I ever recalled that staff offered something and industry turned it down. But
we can have that on an official vote, you know, at the next meeting, and sort of if you want to take a vote on it, go on the record of the 1st versus the 15th, and go from there. But I think that's enough to get a draft season to going on the James. I think Dan's on YouTube, but he can't talk, so now we're going over to, and again, apologies on the technical stuff. We'll try something different maybe next meeting, but Pocomoke and Tangier sound. So again, the recommendations from that work group were to maintain the current 2-year rotation into Pocomoke and Tangier. So those main management areas. Pocomoke area should be open for no more than 3 months. Again, just for the committee's reference, it doesn't necessarily work over there as much. The Pocomoke has tended here recently to have 40-50 boats, and the Tangier Sound has had a lot less effort, you know, less than 20 boats. It's a further run over there, bigger water, deeper water. The rocks are 20 to 50 foot deep versus 15 to 20 foot deep over there. So it's just an area that doesn't usually get the same number of boats. The Pocomoke has had more effort than the Tangier Sound. And that was part of the reason, I believe, why the work group recommended that any season extensions that we've done should only occur in the current rotation area. So we've been, again, opening some of these areas out of rotation. But there shouldn't be any extension in the Pocomoke Sound area in that November or March time period. It's, again, one of those areas where it's shallower. The resource isn't as in good of shape there, and oysters don't quite grow as quick as they do in Tangier Sound. So Tangier Sound is one of these areas where the growth rate is probably right up there with one of the fastest growing areas in the bay. Pocomoke's pretty good, but it doesn't quite have that same higher recruitment, higher growth rate that you see in the Tangier Sound. So that was part of the reason for that recommendation. Area 9 and 10, we did put some seed up in those areas this year. And again, I think Tommy had mentioned it, you know, your return on planting that seed is higher if you leave it alone for a year. And we'd opened an area 11 last year that hadn't been open for a while, but area 9 and 10 were proposed just to be open to hand tongue this season, with looking at potentially area 10 in future seasons, and then I think dividing portion area 9 into a hand tongue area is what had been discussed in the past. That was the recommendation, and unfortunately, I don't think Don made this call, and unfortunately, Dan can't talk right now, but I'm not sure if there's any folks on here that had any comments or commentary on this proposal from that working group.
Can we somewhat defer on that until we can get them at the next meeting without us truly making a recommendation?
Yep. I think that's fine. And again, likely we can just defer on that, but there's almost always a request for something in November and something in March. And area 9 and 10 in the upper part of Pocomoke has always been one of these areas that are shallow, hard to replenish, and there's always the request for a couple weeks season here and there. But again, they haven't really necessarily been in a set rotation in the past. We want to table that so we can get our IT issues worked out.
Yeah.
Right.
What if, to be able to help with it, you think just a sidebar with maybe the committee members from over there with staff, so that you could still come forward with something that they've had input in?
I think I'll have to double check, but I believe I can talk to just 2 of them and come back, but I can't have a 3rd person. So, all right, make sure we're not having an unscheduled public meeting, but I'd be glad to try to have a conversation with them separately and then incorporate that into a recommendation going forward for you all to take a look at for the next committee meeting. All right, so we'll talk to Dan and Don and put something out here for everyone, including this group and the members of the public, to take a look at for the next SMAC meeting. So I believe this comes to sort of the final recommendation from that work group was, you know, there was some consensus that it would be appropriate, particularly with Area 1 being recommended to go back into the hand scrape rotation, to look at expanding the current patent tong area there. particularly with working with the harvesters, try to identify any areas outside of those that we regularly replenish to try to, if there is an area where they're working and they're finding, you know, some good oysters and it's a big enough rock, maybe that's something we can look at replenishing to try to sort of help expand that area. I think that one of the things that's helped get the Rappahannock into the state where it is and sort of split up that effort is not just splitting up effort between areas, but also gear types. So having the folks who like to patent tong be able to go takes pressure off other areas, and likewise with hand tongs. So splitting things up by gear type and by area has helped spread things out. So the proposal for this year would be looking at really significantly increasing the area that would be available to work with patent tongs, to pretty much everything from New Point Comfort up to the mouth of the Great Wacomico there. So, you know, there's some clammers who work out off of Old Point now, and they probably get into some oysters here and there. And some of the old survey data, there might be some small rocks here and there. But really to sort of have, you know, the deep rock areas we know are good. There's likely some other lumps here and there, but this allows some sort of exploratory work if folks want to, or if they've seen a rock that they want to go check out. You know, you hear a lot of this talk about these historic rocks below Great Wacomico there, and this gives an opportunity to legally go check those out. And if anyone is listening and they want to go do that and they're getting good oysters, please give us a call. We'll get some numbers. We'll survey that area, and hopefully we can get some replenishment effort out there at some point. But that would be the proposal, to basically have the normal season at Deep Rock, but have that whole area expanded. Coming in as far as Stove Point, this is where the patent tong line is, and the Piankatank runs from Stove Point to Cherry Point right here. So adding that area in, and then all the way down here to basically off New Point Comfort, all the way up to the mouth of the Great Wacomico there. So really looking at opening basically all of that western shore Baylor Bottom to patent tong for this coming season.
What's the duration that would be proposed?
Last year, the Deep Rock area was open from November through March.
Madam Chair, I had a conversation with Dr. Wesson the other day as well. I noticed some historic rocks down below New Point as well, you know, in the bay. Also off Pocosin, I think you said Old Point, you know, all down that way. I don't know where they are, but you know, I heard history about it. You know, I don't know if can we open something all the way up and down there. You know, give those guys Bull Island, Pocosin, you know, to Seaford. You know, it's like you said, some of those small clammers there that are clamming that there.
Yeah, I think that's definitely a possibility. That's something that any Baylor bottom, or really any unassigned bottom, the commission has the authority to open it. And I think, as we talked about, you know, patent tongs might be a good way of, one, they're not moving around as much, so you'd be able to see right where they're working, and they get a good idea of that area, and be less impactful than sending people with scrapes or dredges to that large of an area. I think enforcement might have some concerns with that many boats being able to run with a dredge from one end of the bay to the other, so that might be an option. For some resource, less impactful and law enforcement concerns, to have an exploratory season out there.
Yeah, like I said, I'd like to see that encompassed in it as well. You know.
Was there a traditional patent tong line that ran from Mobjack Bay all the way down?
The original patent tong line, they usually went upriver, so in Mobjack, the patent tong line was just sort of roughly here, and in New York, the same reason, sort of the bridge area was, and almost every river has a patent tong line, and I guess historically the whole area was open to patent tong except above those lines where it was hand tongs. So that's something that if we did establish that, we'd have to look at areas in the Mobjack potentially where we wouldn't want to have a patent tong season, some of those recent sanctuary work areas. But out in the bay proper, yeah, all that area out in deep water in the bay had always been a historic patent tong area. James River was the James River Bridge, I believe, was the Patenton line there in the past.
And the 21-foot we changed that in regulation or something, that's gone, right?
That's right, yeah. I think that was an older regulation where you couldn't Patenton above 21 foot.
So it wasn't code, it was regular.
So yeah, all the areas where you can Patenton are now just in code. Or where there's basically those hard cutoff lines where you can't go above it. They're almost all upriver. So really anything out in the bay all the way down to Pocosin would be potentially an option.
Does the committee have any thoughts on that? As far as
Uh,
down there,
So I guess this expanded Patenton area is our trade-off for giving up Area 1. That's what it looks like to be.
That was the recommendation of that work group, was to not have Area 1 open and put that back in the rotation.
Yeah, well, I'm not a big fan of that. I fought pretty hard to keep that as Patenton area, and I realize that the way the rotations are working in the Rappahannock, that we do need another area. And so I'm kind of torn between that, and I mean, most of the fleet does dredge. I do realize that, but really difficult because I think of a lot of the guys at Patenton work by themselves, and they do that because they don't like to work around boats, and to take an area that's not quite as weather prevalent as working in the bay. If we have an expanded Patenton area there, I just feel for those guys. Most of them are older people that are doing that, you know. Now I realized last year a lot of the guys that were Patenton and did go dredging, and they went dredging because they couldn't catch any oysters in Area 1. Because after we dredged it, everything that was dredged, you couldn't catch anything there. You couldn't remotely catch a limit with Patenton. So that wasn't the reason that they left. They left because they went dredging. And I'm speaking of, you know, a lot of the guys that traditionally did Patenton. So, you know, I mean, it's a big area in the bay there, but it's also very weather dependent. And I know David, his dad. I mean, they know a lot of places besides Deep Rock. They know that place like the back of the hand. And I'm sure it's some areas out there. If you can find some iron, you can find some oysters. I'm sure of that. So anyway, that's kind of my 2 cents worth.
Okay. But do you like the idea of that expanded area there is in addition to something? I mean, I know it's...
Yeah, we got to give up Area 1. Yeah, we need that. I mean, you need more area. Because Deep Rock, I mean, David will tell you last year it was slow there, wasn't it, David? Yeah, the last couple months, don't know what happened there. Were you seeing a lot of dead ones, David? Yeah, a lot of dead ones, yeah. So it was pretty good the year before last, but then last year we did see a pretty good reduction there. I didn't work many days there last year, but David, I mean, he works every day there. So, I mean, yeah, I mean, at least it'll give them an opportunity to go looking, you know, other places, and I'm sure he can find them if anybody can. I can guarantee you on that. So, yeah, I mean, it would definitely help.
All right, well, it's easy enough to turn more areas on the map. It just doesn't make it polygons. It's just everything else in between, it gets complicated. But,
Yeah.
I think that was everything from that working group's recommendation, working through that. I appreciate the input on there. Are there anything else that this group would like staff to bring back next meeting, which I think we're looking at July 7th, or excuse me, August 7th, which is that Wednesday in July. or excuse me, August, I don't know, it's getting late for me. August 7th.
6 is always.
Wednesday, is that what we're doing?
August 6th.
August 6th, okay, all right, August 6th. I need to write that and underline it there on the date, thank you.
Yeah, you be here at 7.
Last year, we had, something came, I had in my notes to bring up Bayside Public Bottom as part of the discussion. Maybe that can be wrapped up to when we have Dan and Don on the phone too. That was in my notes to.
I think that was Punkateek over there where we did do a shell plant this year. There's another area in Bayford on the Bayside Eastern Shore that could potentially be opened again this year.
The last meeting, we talked about assisted hand tongs.
Yeah, I think we're gonna talk about that under, under other business. Oh, no worries, you're, once again, you have a great segue to the next topic.
All right.
Okay.
We can move on to other business. I think JC had some information to present, if you don't mind.
Yeah, I'd like to get the committee's view on this. I've been approached by several hand tongers, not so much older gentlemen as it is middle age. Everybody trying to make life a little bit easier, and what it concerns is mechanically assisted hand tongs. And it is legal in Potomac River, and it is legal in Maryland. It's not legal in Virginia. So what mechanically assisted?
I was trying to pull up the video there.
Is that?
Sorry about that. There we go. All right.
What mechanically assisted would mean, I would assume, and we have some people in the audience that will speak to this too, hopefully, I would assume electric would be the favored option, wouldn't it, Mike, as opposed to hydraulic?
Yeah, it's electrical or hydraulic.
Yeah.
It depends on how you build the system.
Yeah, depends on how you want to rig it up. So I think this committee needs to know that this commission has incentivized hand tonging quite a bit over the past few years, such as, hand tonging. You do have your own private ground that you hand tong on. They did increase the limits from 8 bushels to 14 bushels, which was a lot. So we think that, and by doing this, we're hoping that this will help put more people into the hand tonging. I know Mike was talking about it's not many people doing it. Don't know how many in total, Mike. You might have some numbers. You do a little bit of it. I don't know how you feel about this. I'm presenting it as an option. You don't have to do it. If you like the old-timey way, you like to pull them up and use your arms and your muscles, that's fine. You can do it. This would be an option. So, and it will not help you catch any more oysters. It might be a little bit faster pulling the tongs up and down, as the way we see it. I mean, it's not going to fill the tongs for you, but you still have to guide the tongs up. So all it's doing is helping pull the weight of the tongs up against the current. So it's really not going to improve your catch any whatsoever, So I just wanted to kind of see if anybody had any thoughts about it. I'd like to, maybe in the next meeting, maybe try to get a motion on it and carry it to the commission and see how they feel about it and see how staff feels. And we do have, like I say, Mike Brookover in the audience. If he would like to say a few words about it, we'd appreciate it.
And I think they provided a video if
Yep.
if folks want to see how it.
That's done.
Shared. We
Yep.
need to play that? All right.
Yeah.
So this is how they do it up in Maryland, is my understanding.
That's Luke.
Yep. I think he's narrating there. I turned the sound off there.
Bottom of the screen, picture.
What kind of rigs he got? He got a belt driven. Yeah.
Pedal here, and they have a little line connected to the heads of the tongs, and that'll bring it up the side of the boat, save your back a little bit. A lot. So you'll hit that pedal, and that'll bring the tongs up. We'll have a lick
Mike, your thoughts on this?
It don't hurt,
Right.
it's not hurting a thing.
Right, that's what I agree.
It's not speeding you up, it's just not going,
Mhm.
because it's nothing, you're working the tongues, all it's doing is helping you pull the tongue.
Pull 'em up and down in
And
there.
basically, it was used in Potomac River and up in Maryland,
Uh-huh.
people do it in Maryland,
Yeah.
in the deeper water.
Yeah,
We were working James River, you were working 16 to 18 foot tongue, really, it defeats your purpose.
Mhm.
But if someone, hey, the back, I understand.
Wants to do
it's
it,
not- It wouldn't hurt a thing.
I agree,
It
yeah.
wouldn't be against nothing or no one.
Mhm. Still 14 bushels, that's all you can catch, any way you look at it.
It's not gonna, like you said, JC said, it's not gonna help you catch stars. All it's doing is helping you. You
Mhm.
got the guy that really, if somebody work, pull the tongues, it's a little bit slower
Mhm.
than if you want to pull them by hand, you know,
Mhm.
and it depends on, but if somebody's got some age on them, yeah, one day I'll probably wish that I had. So, to say no, that it would be wrong, I don't see nothing wrong with that.
Nick?
Madam Chair. Yeah, and I went with Mike. We created a video, but evidently my production wasn't as good as Luke's. So,
You wanna, we can play the other one there if you
yeah,
want.
I don't think I think that.
That's what he's got. Yeah, that's Mike.
So my videography's not that great. But we made this.
Pretty good.
Yeah, probably not good for the public to comment. It's really no faster, as you can see in this video, and Mike
I
can't
wouldn't
catch
watch it, but
anything anyway.
Yeah, we know why you want to play it.
Yeah, it's not,
Yeah, it's not any faster, it just saves the
Anything
back a
is
little
slower.
bit.
Yeah,
It's slower than pulling
I-
by hand.
I
yeah,
agree.
it's slower than pulling by hand, that's
For
all.
sure.
I bet it is, yeah.
So that's, I would agree.
They've used it in Maryland. I remember being up there in the early 90s and they were using it then. But I do notice everybody uses it.
Yeah.
You never see a boat in Maryland that
Right.
doesn't use
It's
it.
kind of like crab pot pullers. Many years we pulled crab pots by hand. And then when everybody got a 12-volt Bombay, airplane Bombay electric motor and made crab pot pullers out of it, nobody pulls them by hand. I can tell you. So,
Yeah, you know, we sit on this committee, and not only that, talk with ourselves of the graying of the watermen.
mhm.
And I don't know, I'm getting old, I wouldn't do that.
I know.
But, you know, watermen are getting older, and we're getting, I think you just said, there's less people shaft tonguing, so I just
Yeah.
don't see nothing but to help.
I think the main way would help Mike would be off in the deeper waters where you could work 22s, 24s, 26s or whatever, you know. I don't know if you even get wood for that.
Yeah, the trees is gonna be the problem on that
Get
one.
wood for it, that's,
Right.
that's the problem you got now, you can't get the wood.
Wood for it, right, yeah. Yeah, but if you can get off in that deeper edges where, I think would really help catch oysters that
Yeah.
traditionally wouldn't be caught.
Like I was telling Andrew up in where you've done that, planted the seed up above Jail Island, there, which that bottom, like I told you, nobody's working no more because you don't have the tongs to work.
Mhm.
Well, I mean, my understanding is if you can work it with a 12-foot shaft, set of shafts, you wanna use 12s and 14s, and it's harder on up from there, so.
I know, yeah, so, anyway, that's,
Okay.
you know, we'll. Did you want to say anything, Mike?
I think you said it all, JC, I appreciate that.
Okay, thank you.
Make a motion to put it on the agenda?
Yeah, I'll be glad to make a motion that we, if this committee would accept mechanically assisted hand tongs in the hand tong fishery.
Can I ask a quick question?
Yep.
Roger, do you have any comments on?
As someone who's getting old with a bad back, I think that's a great idea.
Okay.
I think the one question maybe for Mike and some of the other hand tongers is that the two main areas that we have hand tong fisheries are the clean coals and the seed areas. Doubt most of the seed areas, most of those guys would want to use these, but that's something to consider maybe the next meeting is whether or not we want to make this for clean coal only or also for seed. Seed's one of those quota limited fisheries as well. This, I'm not sure if it's going to help you that much. Most of those areas are working 12 or 14
Yeah,
foot
you're working
shafts
on it.
anyway.
It's not
so-
Well, let me make an amendment to that, an option to have mechanically assisted hand tongs. You know, they're not required, it would just be an option.
Yeah, and for the, like you said, the clean calls, it would be, I know that anybody gonna do it for the see, or like I said, it's slow, but someone want to do it, I don't see, it's not hurting nothing.
I'll second that motion with the amendment for only clean coal. Good with it?
Yep, I'm done.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay? Thank you, J.C.
That could take it off the agenda for next meeting. We can say that SMAC recommended that go forward. So there we go. All right.
Well, we're still in other business. Anybody else have anything else they want to bring to discussion? Any members of the audience?
You want to touch on anything else, Adam?
Ben, you've been awful quiet then.
I'll get you next time.
All right, motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn. Do we have a second?
A second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much.